President Trump says he plans to direct federal law enforcement interventions in Baltimore and in Chicago. And a federal appeals court panel has ruled the Trump administration cannot use a wartime power to deport Venezuelans. Good morning. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. President Trump says he'll direct federal law enforcement intervention into Baltimore and Chicago.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks.
But the mayors of the city say they don't want federal intervention. Trump has already sent National Guard troops into Los Angeles and has kept them in Washington, D.C. All of the city's mayors are Democrats who are Black Americans. Yesterday, a federal judge ruled that Trump broke federal law by sending the National Guard to Los Angeles in June. This had followed days of protests against immigration raids. The judge ruled Trump's actions raise concerns that his administration is creating a national police force with the president as its chief. More than 1,000 employees of the Department of Health and Human Services say they want Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to quit. Today, they signed an open letter. They state that Kennedy's leadership has put the health of all Americans at risk. This open letter to Kennedy is also addressed to Congress. The staffers say they've already pleaded with Kennedy to stop spreading inaccurate health information and to stop firing health experts. The staffers say Kennedy has never responded to them. A panel of the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has blocked the Trump administration from using a wartime power to deport Venezuelans from 3 states. As NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports, that means the issue of President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act could wind up back at the Supreme Court.
The latest court decision blocks deportations with the use of the act from Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Earlier this year, Trump invoked the 18th century wartime power to help streamline deportations of Venezuelans he says are members of the Tren de Aragua gang. Since then, the use of this power has attracted numerous legal challenges, including 2 prior Supreme Court decisions. But the High Court has yet to directly address the larger question of whether Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act at all was legal. This preliminary injunction can now be appealed by the Trump administration to settle that bigger question. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
2 congressmen will hold a press conference this morning on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. They'll be joined by several women sexually assaulted by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Some will tell their stories. Their press conference comes as the lawmakers are pushing for the release of more files on the Epstein investigation. NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports a House committee has started releasing thousands of pages from the case.
The Oversight Committee is in the middle of an investigation into the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender. The committee's already received files subpoenaed from the Justice Department. But some lawmakers are pushing for more public access to the files. Democrat Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie are using a procedural maneuver in hopes of forcing a vote on the House floor that could compel the Justice Department to release the investigation files. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, the Capitol.
There's been a major ruling against big tech company Google. A federal judge has issued a series of penalties against Google for acting as a monopoly in the search engine market. NPR's Jacqueline Diaz has more.
It's a ruling that's been 5 years in the making, and one that falls far short of what the federal government sought from federal judge Amit Mehta. In 2020, the Justice Department filed an antitrust case against Google. The DOJ said the tech giant was operating as a monopoly because Google's exclusive deals with device makers like Apple and Samsung unfairly boxed out competitors. Last year, Judge Amit Mehta agreed. Now he has ruled that Google doesn't have to sell off its Chrome browser, but that the company does have to stop making exclusive deals. Judge Mehta said Google can still pay those device makers to preload Google Search and other products. Jacqueline Diaz, NPR News.
Google is a financial supporter of NPR. Officials in some Minnesota cities are urging Governor Tim Walz to call a special legislative session. They're calling for a statewide ban on assault-style weapons. The governor is considering a state response to the mass shooting that killed 2 children at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. Minnesota Public Radio's Clay Masters reports.
The mayors of some of Minnesota's most populous cities are calling for a statewide ban on assault-style weapons. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry says if the state legislature doesn't pass a ban, it should let cities act.
We see the aftermath and how communities are broken apart by gun violence. We have the ability to change, and so Give us the authority to do it. Change the law that preempts cities from acting if you are not able to do it yourselves.
Democrats have slim control of state government here in Minnesota. Some Republicans in the state legislature say city-by-city ordinances would intrude on gun rights. For NPR News, I'm Clay Masters in St. Paul.
Vice President Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance will be in Minneapolis today. They'll hold private meetings with victims of last week's church shooting and their families to pay respects. President Trump says U.S. forces have destroyed a ship in waters off Venezuela. The move has increased tension between the two countries. As John Otis reports, Trump says the destroyed vessel was carrying drugs headed for the U.S.
Trump announced the attack by the U.S. Navy from the White House.
Over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat.
In a social media post, Trump wrote that 11, quote, terrorists were killed. He described them as members of the Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan criminal gang. It was the first confirmed U.S. attack since Trump ordered Navy destroyers and cruisers to the Caribbean to help stop the flow of illegal drugs. Washington accuses Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro of leading a drug cartel. Maduro claims that the U.S. military buildup is meant to overthrow his government. For NPR News, I'm John Otis.
China has celebrated the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II with a military parade. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports some 24 foreign leaders attended the event, but few were from Western nations.
Troops marched in precise lockstep through Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Drones, laser weapons, and other hardware, which China claims only it has, also rolled by. On the reviewing stand, China's leader Xi Jinping was flanked by Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In a speech, Xi Jinping called on China's people to carry on the spirit of resistance that led them to victory in World War II. He finished by saying,
中华民族伟大复兴势不可挡.
The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable. Despite the striking image of Xi, Putin, and Kim standing together, the three are not expected to hold a formal trilateral meeting. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
This is NPR.